There are many things that happen in the Industrial Revolution, some things bad and some good. Although there are many things that happen that we should be thankful about, some things can be questioned as if they actually did benefit our society at all.
Many innovations were made in the agricultural and industrial revolution. These systems were the movement that helped improve and mold our economy today. Many machines and physical modifications to the earth were made. This caused benefits and drawbacks to our society. Although we have kept some similarities in our history, we have differences as well. The foundation for today's agroeconomy is the agricultural revolution. From the 18th century to the early 19th century, we developed 5 important farming devices: the seed drill, agricultural science and enclosure, farming for profit, and selective breeding. The first one is Jethro Tull, who invented the seed drill in 1674 and 1741. The machine struck Berkshire, England, with awe, making the manufacturing of projects faster. This innovation broke up and enriched soil, planted seeds in a uniform line, and wasted less of the seeds. Horses, reducing hard labors for farmers, would pull it. Today we use a tool that is similar to the seed drill. Both plant seeds in an efficient way. The difference is how we build the device. We use more durable materials that last for a longer period of time. Agriculture science and enclosure drastically changed farming for the world. Agriculture science was the companion planting of corn, beans, and squash. When the innovation struck England, Lord Townshend found the rotating crops of turnips, barley, grasses, and wheat from field to field made the land more profitable for the years following. Enclosure ended the old farming system, strip farming, forever. The new system increased farming fields for landowners. Instead of moving from strip to strip, you would have a bigger plot to work with. Despite the difference of not using the same agriculture science, we still use the enclosure technique. From farmers to farmers continue to use conjugated crops for the businesses. Farming for profit, selective breeding shaped the ways to make better sales. For example, harvesting food for profit, not just to feed the owner. This was risky because producing more food meant the less it cost for the buyers. Farmers would also use selective breeding to produce more animal materials. An example would be mating 2 sheep that produced an abundant amount of wool. Agriculture owners, to this day, continue to use these techniques. The economy is built on our innovations from the Industrial Revolution. From the 1700s on, the industry expanded rapidly in Britain. These innovations shaped factory machinery and transportation. Watt's steam engine was invented in the 1760s. It was an improvement of Newcomen's engine. The device could control the steam output and engine speed. The heat from the coal could create a vapor in the main compressor, forcing the other parts of the machine to move. Watt's steam engine was a big improvement that became a reliable source. Back in that day, it could be located anywhere. Watt's steam engine nowadays is used to power large machines, trains, and ships made of steel. For the most part, steam engines are used for the same things. The textile industry kicked off with the nationwide sweeping innovation in 1764. James Hargreaves, a machine that produced thread 10 times faster than a spinning wheel, created the spinning jenny. This machine was driven by hand cranks and many spindles. Throughout the years to come, Other inventions were made, such as the water frame by Richard Arkwright, and Samuel Compton's spinning wheel would make threading even faster. Transportation was an ongoing process, beginning in the 1700s. A Scottish engineer named John Loudon McAdam created the first form of transportation. He was one of the most successful road builders, making roads out of crushed gravel. The larger pieces of gravels were pressed into the ground, with the granite gravel laying on top. For drainage, slopes were made on the sides. Bringing it back to the present day, we still use this idea. Some places in British Columbia have the macadam roads, using the same technique in more common areas. The people use compacted asphalt or concrete. The roads made coaches carrying people and mail pass through town to town. It also helped with the moving of trade goods. For water transportation, canals were constructed in the 1700s. The waterways were used to transport boats or barges with cargo. This reduced the shipping costs by 3/4. Canals became popular in many places, such as Manchester in 1761 and England. By the 19th century, over 4,000 kilometers of canals were built. There are still canals remaining in Europe. One canal is the picturesque Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Many places don't use canals for the original purposes. For longer distances with heavier loads, railways were handy. As steam engines made its way through different cities, different inventors believed that this innovation could be used for transportation. In 1829, George and Robert Stephen made a locomotive called the Rocket. The innovation made the transportation of people and products more efficient, and it took less people to maintain. We continue to use railways. In Vancouver, we use the SkyTrain, West Coast Express, or just regular trains. We use railways for cargo transportation every single day. The only difference is, from 1800s, is the speed of the train and the capacity.
During the Industrial Revolution, many children were put in work in industries and factories doing different jobs, such as picking out loose thread from mechanized looms or cleaning out chimneys. The children were hired a lot because they were given a lower wage and business owners wanted the cheapest labor possible. A lot of children had to work because some poor families depended on it. By working, the children were exposed to pollution and dangerous working conditions, which we will talk about more later. Although nowadays the United Nations tries to keep children from working in dangerous working conditions, some second world countries continue to do so. It has been made mandatory that children have a schooling system and they live in a safe condition. As I talked about child labor and how horrible the working conditions were for the children, well, the working conditions weren't that well for the adults either. Poor working conditions, long, hard hours of unsafe work with little pay. Due to this, cities became very dirty, crowded, and disease-ridden. Factory owners didn't want to spend their money on improving their factories. There were shifts from 12 to 16 hours, and workers barely got enough sleep or food. Many were affected negatively because of being exposed to different things such as coal dust or lead. Some of these working conditions still exist to this day, but the difference is that we are giving a minimum salary and that the owners have to supply their workers with safe equipment, although it's not followed everywhere. Another huge thing that happened in the Industrial Revolution was that people were separated into different social classes. The upper class, which consisted of the rich, and it was very small population. The upper middle class that were employed as doctors and engineers, the lower middle class that worked as teachers or market owners, lower class people that did not have a chance at education and lived in cramped rooms or apartments. We still have these different classes going on to this day, but we are trying to help lower class people as much as we can. The difference nowadays is that a person can jump from class to class, which was not possible back in the days. The next topic I wanted to talk about was laissez-faire, a market that was created in this Industrial Revolution that promoted the idea of being as free as possible from the government, which meant no government interference. Laissez-faire, which translated into let it be. Although it wasn't embraced by the British government, a lot of business owners liked the idea because with having the government not seeing what they're doing, they could hire and fire workers at a reasonable price, and they could also provide little protection for the workers and not get in trouble for it. Today, laissez-faire is called the supply side economics, and supporters believe that government interference should be freed from business owners and taxes should be very small. But the difference is that people think that the society needs to provide a safety net for all its citizens. The Factory Act and the law of children not being able to work more than 12 hours, and it is still illegal for some factories to hire children, and inspections are regular to make sure the conditions of the working habits are safe. Minimum age is nowadays 12 years old, but in some countries that is still not the case. Another huge thing that happened during the Industrial Revolution was the evolution of slavery. During the Industrial Revolution, Britain bought and sold as much as 3 million slaves. But later in 1722, they discovered that there is no law that allows slavery. And in 1807, the British Parliament made the slave trade illegal. Trading and using people is illegal almost everywhere these days. There are forms of slavery that still exist though, and there are many laws that make it impossible for slavery. Through the 18th to 1900s, social reforms tried to improve the life for lower class, as they were concerned about many different things such as education, child labor, housing, and free schooling. Setting the law of maximum hours of work and minimum wage seemed to go bad before becoming good. We are still struggling to this day to provide all the different things for the lower class. Today, children are given the free education to ensure they have a better future, and we try to follow the minimum wage and maximum hours of work and create a sustainable life for everyone. The poor laws were created in the 17th century to address the poverty and left it to the local authorities to help, but this left many poor without relief. Nowadays, there are many people that are still trying to end the poverty that is happening in the world, but it is harder than it looks. We now have welfare and support systems to help the poor get off the streets and not starve. So, to sum it up, things that we should be thankful for during these innovations is that we created new machines that we still use today, well, some of them, that the textile industry grew, and we were able to receive fabrics from different countries because of the new transportation modes we created to deliver products easier. We also demonstrated ways to use natural materials, and we had different ways of farming, and we began to use different techniques to build roads and railways.
And slavery was banned, which has a very large impact to us today.
Now, some things we should not be thankful for is the overpopulation that happened, the air pollution, wasting natural materials, child labor, which is a huge thing that happened, and having too much work with little pay. In conclusion, I think that the Industrial Revolution has equally been beneficial and detrimental to our world today. All the positives of having a new farming system, new modes of transportation, and new jobs came with the negatives of overpopulation, air pollution, and having slavery. It all has its positive and negative outcomes, and I don't personally think we can choose it's been more positive or negative.